Hello there, and welcome. My name is Alon Grunwald, and thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you find this informative. I'm speaking about Schenck v. U.S., searching for the limits of free speech, right? It's the famous Supreme Court case that was the first case to really touch on the limits of free speech and expounds on the concept of free speech by the Supreme Court. Okay, so we'll give you just a little bit of background here. The background is we're in World War I. Right. And World War I is not as popular an engagement as we like to think of it now. A lot of resistance to that. Obviously, it was a European war, capitalist war of imperialism. All these kinds of things are going on. And so it's not as popular a war as we like to think of it now. Military recruitment quotas are woefully underperforming. And so because of that, we get the Selective Service Act of 1917, right? Over 330,000 men by 1918 were declared as draft evaders. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10% of all those are reported for duty, right? So just this massive amount of resistance that the government is finding here. This leads, to a couple of things they try to do to fix this. One of the things they came up with was the Espionage Act of 1917. This provides up to 20 years if a person were to willfully cause or attempt to cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty in the military or naval forces of the United States, or shall willfully obstruct the recruiting or enlistment service of the United States. So this is kind of the background that we got here. And there is some wording about spies in the act, but it's nothing, it's more than anything, it has to do with hindering the government's ability to ramp the country up for war. So what was the crime? Well, we look at Charles Schenck. Charles Schenck at this time is the general secretary of the Philadelphia Socialist Party in response to conscription and in response to the Espionage Acts. They want to print and distribute 15,000 leaflets. And what they want to do is they want to send them to names of people who are in the newspaper as having passed the Army's physical examination. Excuse me, right? So they get the names off of the newspapers, and they want to send those out, and they printed those copies out on August 20th of 1917. Shortly thereafter, they are arrested, detained under the Espionage Act, and later convicted to a 6-month sentence. Right. Now, if you look at some of you can obviously see the specific wording here on the pictures there of these leaflets that they printed, but you see "Long live the Constitution" or "Assert your rights." They use the wording of the Constitution against the government, right? Specifically, they used involuntary servitude, right, which is prohibited by the 13th Amendment. And their position was whether it's the government forcing you or it's a private citizen forcing you, there's no difference between involuntary servitude, or there shouldn't be, right? So they asked readers to sign a petition to repeal Conscription Act and urged readers to voice their objection. It's important to note there was no other call to action besides this. Sign the petition, and voice your objection to the war, right? That's what they were asking people to do. Okay. So again, they were convicted to 6-month sentences. This was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, argued January 9th and 10th of 1919, and then decided a couple of months later on March 3rd of that year. What's interesting about these dates is the war is over, right? The war is over by this point. So we see another situation where we cannot rely on the Supreme Court as a safeguard against the excesses of war legislation, right? It's another in a long line of instances where the Supreme Court is just, they're uninterested in fulfilling the role as a check on government, right? And so they are convicted of Section 3 of the Espionage Act, prohibiting any attempt to obstruct the recruiting and enlistment services of the United States. Now, one interesting thing is that the court actually affirmed the right of free speech, but they said it's affirmed in ordinary times, right, is when you would be able to use the language that they use. But ultimately, they upheld the conviction unanimously, and they equated it to, I can read the actual wording here. The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing a panic. The question in every case is whether the words are used in such circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to present. It is a question of proximity and degree. So falsely shouting fire in a crowded theater, I don't think anybody would ever object to anything along those lines. The question is that what these people were doing? And clear and present danger is another one of those kind of Supreme Court standards and tests that a lot of people have heard of, even though we don't know specifically about this case, right? So, what's the impact here, right? What's the impact here? Clear and present danger for whom? Right, that's what's most important, right? Who is providing more clear and present danger? A socialist who's asking you to sign a sheet of paper against conscription and to voice your opinion to the politicians who supposedly represent you, right? I mean, that just sounds like being part of a political process. Now, maybe you think it's too far, maybe it's not far enough, whatever, but it's really just it's just the political process. So, the president is taking the country to war. And these people are saying no. So who exactly is providing the larger clear and present danger here, right? Also, they said that you have these rights under ordinary times. You don't have them now. Can the government decide that? What constitutes ordinary times? Where did we talk about that? Where have we ever debated this? When has this ever been an issue? What are the laws that now are applicable and not applicable during ordinary times? Is there a list? What do we consult? What do we do? Right? So again, they're urging Americans to make their voice heard in the political process, and this became illegal, right? Modern autocrats in North Korea, Saudi Arabia, or Iran would be proud, right? So also, I just want to note that in Brandenburg v. Ohio, this was about 4 or 5 decades later, that this standard is overturned, the clear and present danger standard, and it's replaced with imminent lawless action. So your words have to incite some kind of imminent lawless action. And that was the standard. And I believe that's the standard that we still use today. Now, why is this significant at the time? Right? I mentioned earlier, 900 people went to jail over this act. And what does it say about the value of the First Amendment, right? If everybody is happy at the Four Seasons, right? Everybody's happy at the Four Seasons. It's when you have to kind of struggle and you're not there. That's when people get displeased. And so in time, when everything's great, free speech isn't that big of an issue because nobody's complaining about anything. Nobody's saying anything, out there. And so free speech is one of those things that you need it most in these non-ordinary times. And so what is the value of the First Amendment if that's the time that you do not have it, right? I also chose this topic because I feel that laws are routinely made for our protection. And then those same laws are used to stifle our freedom and creativity, right? All Americans, in my opinion, have to keep an eye out for the favors that our government is doing for us. And this is the relevance today. And this is kind of where I feel that we're going. So anyway, so I hope you kind of learned a little bit about the situation, kind of what happened, where it's going, what it meant. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.